everybody. Happy Thursday and welcome to the TruNorth Dynamics Business Central webinar series. In this webinar, we are going to be discussing the customizable and reusable Excel layouts. You all should see a Q&A with your presentation, and I want you to feel free to use that Q&A to ask any questions that you might have during the webinar. At the end of the webinar, we'll go through those questions with Michelle. Michelle Cerna, of course, is your webinar presenter. She is the head of our BC team here at TruNorth Dynamics. So I'm going to let Michelle take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am logged into Business Central and ready to get going. Today, like Jade said, is the day that we are covering one of the newest features in Business Central. It was released in the April update. This feature is being able to adjust the layouts of Excel reports in Business Central. So previously we had two main types of report layouts, and that was RDLC, which is the printed reports inside of Business Central, and then Word layouts, which is when we're utilizing Word to format and utilize any of the sales reports or purchasing documents that are going out. Now we have the added bonus of the Excel report layouts. The Excel report layouts are low code or no code. So meaning that any of our reports where we're exporting them to Excel, we pretty much have this functionality we're about to show. However, if you wanted custom reports or reports that don't exist, we can still get that functionality for you. We would engage with our developer here on the Business Central team to create a specific report with your needs to have it as an Excel export. And then you could take over and do these reports with all of the formats and dashboards that we're about to look at. So both options of no coding with our built-in Excel reports and low code if you want some custom reports built. You may have already seen some of these reports in action or the buildup of the reports being available. In one of the releases in 2021, we had the ability to see, if I hop over into, let's take a look at a vendor. If I were to go to a report on my vendor, you would see export to Excel and then data or data and layout in your options. So I'm just going to go out to, let's do vendor purchase list. When you go to your send to send it to Excel, you might have seen these data and layout and data only. They've been there for a few months. They weren't really doing much before. Now they are actually there for a purpose. So the data and layout is going to give you the normal report that you would expect to see, whatever comes out of Business Central inherently. This is a purchase list that we have. And so nothing exciting. This is what it looks like if I were just to do data and layout. Okay. But let's imagine that you want something like a dashboard built out of that information. You could build your own dashboard in a sense off of that data. Again, we'll do the same vendor purchase list and we'll do send to, but this time we're going to choose data only. Now it's going to give you a file. Let me open that up here. And the file is going to look a bit different than the one that has the data and the layout. Your data won't be easy to read. It's meant to be kind of the basis of a report that you would like to build. So we can see it comes with two tabs. I have my first tab, that's data. It has column names here. It has the data that exists currently. Not the easiest to read. It's not meant to be easy to read. It's really just a repository of data that's coming out of Business Central. The second tab that we have is the report metadata. And this is filters that are set on your report when you run it. This is properties, report IDs. One of the things that you're going to want to note is this object ID. The object ID is the report number that we're looking at. So there's two ways that you can get this number here in your spreadsheet. And I would say you want to write that number down on your paper when you're taking notes. or in Business Central, you have the ability, let's say you're running that report, you have the ability to go up to your question mark here and help and support, and then your inspect pages and data. The inspect pages and data is a really simple way for us to get whatever you are working on. So it's going to tell us it's number 309. It's a report we're working on. Either way, that's easiest for you. Grab that number because you're going to need it in the future. Now on these two tabs, you want to make sure that you aren't changing anything. You aren't copying and pasting a column. You aren't moving them around. You aren't renaming them. We aren't adjusting our report metadata. This is the information that Business Central uses to base whatever custom reports you want to use. So what you get to do is add on additional tabs. So when I add on those additional tabs, I can call them whatever I want. We'll start off with something simple here, just so you can get the feel of how these reports work. So I'm going to name my sheet, let's just do vendor purchase dashboard. Okay, and now what I get to do is then grab my data and display it in a way that I'd like. We'll start really simple with just a visual. So I'm going to come here and do insert, and I want to insert just a column here, and I'm going to come here and select my data. I'm going to go onto that data tab, and I can just grab everything or have a really crazy thing there, or I can grab, let's say, my vendor name and my purchase amount, maybe the, yeah, we'll stick with those two. Okay, so we'll say okay, and it's going to build in my purchasing amount per vendor. Okay, just a really simple, easy, visual cue of how much we've spent with each vendor. So we can change our title here to vendor purchase amounts. You get to utilize all of your normal Excel features. So anything that's in here that's password protecting, or you can come in and you can make comments and leave comments utilizing built-in Microsoft functionality. All of these are going to be available to you. And once you're done, again, we'll start with our simple and move up. You're just going to save that. You can call it whatever you want. I'm just saving it right to the downloads where I got it from. And next, we need to bring that back into Business Central. So our next step is going to be report layouts. Now, report layouts is another new window. You'll see that there's custom report layouts and built-in report. You just want the basic report layouts. This is specifically for our Excel documents. You can see things that have RDLC reports. You can see the Excel reports. So that one number that we jotted down, that 309, you're going to want to find that. So in our search, we just type in 309, or you could scroll down. This is the vendor purchase list. And now we're going to do new layout. We're bringing in a new layout because I had 309 selected. It fills it in for me. And then we're just going to name it. So Michelle's vendor purchase dashboard. And I'll do the same description. You can really have two different ones, whatever your preference is. And then, of course, putting in that format. The format will stay Excel. You want Excel because we're bringing in that Excel repeatable report. And then if you want it available in all companies, you can check it. If you only want it in the company you're currently in, you uncheck it and say okay. This is going to allow you to now choose that file. So I'm going to come choose that vendor purchase list, and it's going to insert that report for me. Our last step before we get to use it is just going to set default. If you are doing any of the built-in Excel reports in Business Central, just like what we did, where we did a report that was existing that we're then altering, you can only have one of your default reports, just like I did. If you have a custom report or you want to make something where you can choose from different layouts, then we just need to add a little bit of code, a few lines of code in there to make it so that you can have multiple layouts. So I'm going to set this as my default. And now when I reprint it, I will have my new information. So I'm going to go again to vendor purchase list, And now you can see the buttons have changed. This says download. So I can come here and I can download my new version of this Excel report. Once it opens up here, I'll drag it over. So it just opens right up with your new dashboard. Very simple report. You can see how easy it is just to create a simple graph here for us to have a visual. Let's make it a little bit more useful, something that we might use in real life. I'm going to take a look at how about a customer trial balance? Let's take a look at that here. So I'm going to go over to customers to navigate. I could also type into my tell me anything window, customer detail trial balance, but we'll navigate this way. I'm going to hop on to reports and grab a finance report of my customer detail trial balance. Okay. I could fill out any of the filters that I'd like this report to apply to. And again, I'm going to go to send to, and I'm going to do data only. I'm going to show you first data and layout so you can see what we start with. Okay, so this is what the report starts with. Okay, just a really plain detailed trial balance here. Let's make it a little bit more useful to us. So reports, finance reports, and customer detail trial balance. And instead of my data and layout, let's do data only. Now, when we're looking at our data, there's a lot of lines of information. Once my Excel opens up, I'll bring it over for you. Okay, there's a lot of lines of information. And maybe we want to get a dashboard, some visuals. Maybe we want to have just a sum for our customers, an open AR in a sense with our remaining balances. Or if we want document details, we can do that as well, because we've got a lot of information and data here, and it's kind of a lot to consume, right? We've got invoice type, or our document types, invoice payment, our numbers, our posting dates, all kinds of information. So let's make it a little bit easier to consume and with a little bit more visual cues for us. So I have two goals. I want to create one that is like a customer AR, okay, my open balances. So I'm just going to call this customer AR. And then my other goal is I want some document details. I want to look at things like my document type for each customer, how much invoices I have versus credit memos, that type of information. So I'm going to create a second tab, and I'm just going to call it document details. The type today, goodness. So let's start with our AR. Now I've got a whole lot of information that was on the other page, and the easiest way for me to get summary levels of all that information is something like a pivot table. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to insert a pivot table, and all you have to do, I'm going to click on, and actually let me scroll all the way over and click on A1. I'm holding down Control Shift, and I'm clicking my right arrow to go all the way to the end of my table. Still holding down Control and Shift, I'm clicking my down arrow to select all the way down to the bottom line. And I'll just go ahead and say OK. And it's going to bring in all that data onto our pivot table. And now I can start choosing the information that I'd like to see. So the first one I'd like, I want my customer name. You can tell that some of these fields have kind of some strange names on here. If you ever need help with the names of the fields, let us know. But for the most part, you can figure out from the type of data that you have as well what you're looking at. But we have things like our customer balance, LCY is local currency, customer remaining amount, that's what remains due. So we've got kind of some silly names, but at the same time, they're decipherable. So let us know if you need help. We're happy to help you, but I think that you'll get used to them over time. The first one I want on here is going to be my customer name. So I'm going to grab that name and make that onto a row here. Now I have all of my names. And then I want my remaining amount that's due, because we're looking at open receivables. So I'm going to make that my value. And you can see we've got some silly numbers here. We just need to change this type into a sum of those values rather than the count. So I'm going to do my sum here, and oh, I must have the wrong column. So, oh, and you know what I do, because I want my my local currency. This is the case where it's going to be maybe a strange field here, but if we were to look at the background, you could see that the local currency is actually looking at the remaining amount for your invoices and your sales details. So I have those amounts come in. You can also tell, again, if you come under your columns, you can see what data you're looking at. And I want to just do some basic formatting. So if I come onto my pivot table, I can look at my field settings, and I just want to change that number format. These are all just normal built-in Excel functions that I'm doing here. This isn't Business Central specific. So we are happy to help with BC. If you want some Excel help, I'm sure we can help you a bit, though I don't claim to be an Excel expert, but I can navigate around through for you. I also want to do just a filter. So I'm going to put a full filter on my pivot table here, because I don't want anything that's 0. So this is obviously optional. That's just how I prefer to see information on here. I also like having my columns here the correct name. So you can just come here and rename your columns. This is all going to be whatever your preference is for your types of dashboards that you're building. But you can see it gives me my information that I need. And now I've got a nice basis of data that's being displayed back to me. Because I have chosen the data table, rather than just a line in the table, I've chosen the whole data table. Whenever this data refreshes, if we have new customers or customers leave, my pivot tables will also update, because we're pointing to that whole data table. And now that we've got this nice clean base of our data, we can do additional analytics on it. So we have the ability to come in and add on slicers. Slicers are ways that we can slice and dice our data, filter on that data. They also look very visually nice on reports. So for me, I wanted to choose something like my document type. So let's just find document type up here. Here we go. So I can say, okay, it's going to bring in a slicer. So if I were to choose any values or anything, it would filter on those for me. You may see null on something when you post to Business Central. If you use sales invoices, it very easily recognizes invoice on those or credit memos. If you use a journal, like a sales journal or a general journal, and you don't put a document type and leave that document type blank, that's why you're going to see that there's some null or blank values, just as a notice as to why you might see that in there. We can also, based off of our pivot tables, build in other charts. So in my previous example, I built the chart exactly off of my data. You can build them off of your pivot tables so that your slicers also work with them. So for example, if I select my pivot table and come into my pivot table analyze, I can come to pivot chart, and you can see the previews of these different charts with the pivot table data. So I can come in here and I can add in these reports. I can make, all the visual information the way that I'd like it to be and insert it on there. If I were to change my slicer, you can see it adjusts my pivot chart as well. So that's why you want to change your approach depending on what types of information you're displaying on these reports. And remember, you always have your ability to go into design. So you can make these reports look exactly how you'd like, where before we didn't have the ability to kind of make these, interesting or have the information that we wanted. So lots of fun for those of you who like to consume data in different ways. I'll just add on a couple more charts so we can see our information the way we'd like it to look. Okay. And however you're building or designing these reports is how they're going to come out looking. So really you can make anything that you want. You can fit it onto pages. Keep in mind that these reports are meant to be in Excel. They're not necessarily printed reports. You can make them so that you can print the Excel document, but if you tried to print it out in Business Central, it's not meant to be used that way. It's meant to be an interactive sheet on Excel. So here's, just an example of that customer AR, but maybe we want to get some document details because we also saw that there was individual information on things like our invoices. So I'm going to go to that document details tab, and I'm going to add in another pivot. I just want to come here to my pivot table. I again want to just select, I'm going to select the whole thing. It's easy to start with everything and then just choose whatever data I want. So again, selecting my entire data table. And I'm going to then build my pivot off of this. Okay, so I want specifically a few levels actually. I want to see my document type. Excuse me. So I'm going to go down to my document type. And that one's here. I also want my document number. So my document number, let's find that guy here. Let me start at the bottom and work up just in case. Document number is right next to it. Perfect. So I have my document number. You can see that we've started filtering by type and by number. I want to know my due date. So I'm going to also add in that due date. You can see that it's going to add in another value. And then lastly, I want my customer's balance. So I can see what those balances are. So you can add in whatever it is that you want and utilize this however you feel is appropriate for you, and create these very cool reports for whatever you may have needed. Okay, so let me find my balance here. And let's see, are you the one I want? Yes, you are. So here I've got my totals being rolled up. Again, you can format any of this the way that you want. It's really going to be your preference. If I put it in values, it gives me my subtotals. If I put it under rows, it's going to kind of lump them together in this strange format. So really, it's kind of your preference on how you'd like everything to be displayed. Once I have this information, I can again start building other data off of this. I want to rename my labels here just so I can keep clear as to the information I'm looking at. And then from there, I can build out additional information. So to start with, I actually want to build a second pivot table off of this for my document type. So I don't have to roll up to get information. I can actually just build another pivot table. If you go under those recommended pivot tables, it will actually give you additional information and different layouts. So it's pretty fun to come in here. You can even see here, it gives you by your customer number if you want. Here's with that customer name. So follow Excel's kind of cool tools as well. It's a lot of fun to see how that all works. I'll go ahead and do maybe something like my customer. That one's pretty fun. And I want to add a new one. So let's do, let's add it on another guy here. And first, I'm actually going to add on a pivot. So let's add on another pivot table. And I can grab it from my information here if I really want to. I can go back to my original sheet and change that as well. So let's go on here, and I want to actually change my data source. And again, I just come here and hop on from A to AV and all the way down, pop in that data, and then I can get things like my type. Let's grab just the type. And where are you hiding? I must have passed it. There we go, our document type. and I want those balances. Again, if you want to do your formatting, you can always come in here and go to your number format. I like to see it in with my symbols here, but again, it's based off of your preferences. And from that, I'm going to now get some slicers in. So I want to get my slicers on this pivot table here. I'd like it to be specific to maybe my document type. Let's do one for document type here. And I'm also going to do one for my customer. So let's add in on here, one for my customer. The nice thing about using your entire data table instead of specific points in the data is that I can still use slicers on other data. So I can come here and I can do Alpine Ski House and have all of their invoices, even though it's not a column or a value necessarily there. So that's a great thing about using the data that you have rather than just picking and choosing. And then you can, of course, add in any charts and graphs. So if you wanted to, I can choose to add on some charts here. Goodness, that's not a pretty one. What am I looking at here? Let's do, actually, you know what? I want to do it on my my document type. That'll be a little bit more clean instead of doing it by invoices. So grab that pivot chart. I can do this guy here by my type. I can do my pie chart, pop it in, and now I'm getting to a document that I can have as a dashboard. Again, if you use your slicers, depending on how you use them, is going to filter out different information everywhere. Okay, so next step, you can also utilize information in your data table to return other values. For example, if I wanted to build up maybe an AR aging on one of my windows, I could build out a table. So let's say I want my amount and I want percent of total. And so I can come in here and I can do date ranges like current or 0 to 30, 31 to 60, 61 to 90. I can build my buckets out and I can start adding in my data. Remember, you get to use all of the same Excel functionality that you are used to having. So any of your formulas, your ifs, your concatenates, your filters, all of those are going to work. So you are able to come in and do evaluations on the data that's in your data table and have it return certain values. I will dive into that on our next example. And based off of that, you can return different information. So if I were to save this and import it in, let's take a look at what that looks like. Okay, so again, our next step is going to the report layouts and updating that report. So my report number for my detail ledgers was, for my customer, was 104. So I'm going to find that report here. And I want to, again, create the new layout. And I'm going to name this, we'll say Michelle's customer dashboard. And I'm going to put the same description in and we'll say okay. And I'm going to choose from my files my option here. Now this is one that I finished on those aging buckets so that you can see it when we run it. I'm going to again set as default, and we'll go into more detail of how you can bring that information in on our next example. But to take a look at what this looks like, I'm going to go back into my customer detail trial balance. I could set any filters I'd like, and then I'm going to go ahead and download. Okay, once this opens up for us, I'll pop that over. All right, So here's what it looks like now. And, oops, sorry. Dogs are being protective over the mailman. All right, so here is what we see when we open that up. That customer name, our slicer, our pie charts and graphs that we all have. And again, you can fully utilize them based off of whatever information. In our document details, I have different settings in here so that it will bring in those values and update our amount here. I have that it's going to update based off of our total past due with visual indicators. I'm using conditional formatting on this as well. So again, utilize all of your built-in Excel tools that you have to make different dashboards that are useful to you. Okay, now the next one, the last one that we're going to work on today is a sales list for customers. You can do all kinds of reports. Remember, to your heart's content, play with these, look for things. Some reports aren't best utilized in Excel. You'll find those occasionally, but for the most part, I've played around with a ton of reports in here, and they're all pretty fun to kind of come in here and build out those dashboards of reports. So this customer sales list one is one that I liked making because it's things that we could use all the time. Lots of different business types and different verticals would be able to use this information. So let's take a look, data and layout, what it starts looking out as. And while that's opening, I'll also print out the data only version for us to tinker with here. So under sales list, and data only. And then while that's loading here, I'll open up our version here. This is what it comes looking like. So we have our customer number, their address, and then the amount of sales. So this is just our list essentially of customers that have purchased from us with their mailing information. I want to make it a little bit easier for us to consume or maybe use. So let's take a look at what we can do. I'm going to minimize this one and open up our other version and drag this over. So our data tab, again, lots of information. We've got one row per customer here with our sales amount. Our addresses are stored as different concatenations of information. So we have our contact name, our street address, a concatenation of our city, state, and zip code, and then our country. You can see that this information lines up differently, and that is because these fields are all going to be based off of what information is entered. So I have for Quinn, I have the customer name. I also have name 2 filled out, and then I have the contact. So you can see your fields will be adjusting based off of what information is actually stored on your customer. It works this way on all of your invoices and all of your other forms. So you may already know this, but just to make you comfortable as to why they don't necessarily line up, it's because these fields are going to adjust based off of what is actually filled in. This is nice because on invoices, if you don't have name 2, it doesn't leave a big blank spot on your address. It will actually just roll up your information to a new line. So let's make a few tabs of information. I want to do a list where I have a nice mailing list of my customers. So I could turn them into labels. I could insert this information easily into another system. It creates just a clean list that's in Excel for me to have. So I'm going to name this one mailing list. I also want to have information about those sales. So the data I have is I have my sales for each customer, but I also am lucky enough to have the address on here. So I can look at my sales by a specific place too. So we'll make 2 tabs, customer sales. And let's do another one that's maybe sales by location. Okay, so let's start building that data. I'm going to first grab my mailing list. Now, I mentioned that there's a way to get data into cells without doing pivot tables. And so bringing it in, adding them together, concatenating them. There's a tool inside of Excel called Filter, and that is essentially grabbing data out of tables and displaying it outside of a table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the filter function. So I always cheat because I forget which order I'm supposed to enter things. So I go to my function and I'm going to use filter. If you don't see it in your list, you can just come up here and you can type in filter and it will find it for you. And so I'm going to use an array, an include, and an if empty. Okay, my array is my data, and I'm going to choose what I want first. So I want my customer number, my customer name, my address information. So for this first column, I'm going to choose my data. Now it's going to put in this data hashtag all for you. And that's because as our data updates, as we get new customers, as we lose customers, as our years end, this list is going to be changing. So it's going to fill in all data. Now the include is going to be the exact same thing as your array. Just copy and paste it in. And then your if empty is, we want it to be if it's not equal to null. So I'm going to put that in here. And this webinar series will be available to you after we've finished recording. So you can always come back and reference this. But of course, if you'd like, we are happy to help you. I know that some of the, what did I enter in wrong here? Some of the filters and things may seem strange, but you'll get used to them pretty quickly, and they are very repeatable. And actually, I just don't want. So you can see when I pushed enter there, all of my information from that page filled in. It has this blue box around it, and that is because it will expand and contract as needed based off of that data all. Now a nice way to cheat if you want to, copy and paste that in there and change your field name here. So if you wanted to, you could come here and, oh, you're gonna get mad at me. Come here and grab your title here. Let me push escape so I can get out of there. Grab your title here. So if I want my customer name, I can just copy it, come back to that mailing list and replace that customer number with that field name. It's up to you as to what you think is easiest. So if you want to put in your formula every time, then you can, or you can just pop in that title the same way that I did. So I'm going to, for the sake of time, I'm going to copy in my my data here. So I just went through and did my customer addresses. You can see the only thing that's changing is this here. Okay, and then I just want to format it. So I'm going to format and do whatever you want to make it look the way that you want it to. Expand them, contract them. Now the last step that I want is maybe if I want to concatenate that information, I could come here. Now you could see that this filled in the titles of my columns from the other page. I'm going to put in an actual formula in here. So I'm going to name this column what I want it to be. I'm going to just put customer address. And I want to just concatenate the information from my other fields. So what I can do is, again, we've got our f of x here, our concatenate, to help us make our way through this formula. So I'm going to just select the fields that I'd like. So I want this field, and to have something go to the next line, to use a carriage return, there's a value that you can enter, and that's char 10. That means that it's going to enter onto the next line. Then I'm going to select my next field. I'm just hitting tab when I do this and copy and paste as much as you can. Make it easy on yourself to enter these in. Tab over to the next one, put in that char 10, and then maybe my last value. You can put in as many of the customer address ones as you want, but for example, I just did those 4 there. So now when I push OK, it's going to still look silly. All you need to do to get those carriage returns to work is click your wrap text button, and it makes it beautiful. So I'm a stickler on formatting, so I want everything to be center and maybe center. You can do whatever you want to make yourself happy, and you'll drag down your formula. It will expand with your data as your information changes. So a very simple way to get a list, you could even hide this information if you'd like. You can hide those cells so that when it comes back, it just has customer number and customer address. So that's how you can easily get in the data from your data tab onto something like an interactive table here. Again, you can add, you can subtract, you can use whatever functions are built into Excel with this information. Okay. So now on our sales by customers, if we wanted to, we could create additional graphs. So I know that we're focusing on the address on the first one, but let's come in here and make some customer sales. So I'm going to grab that information. I'm going to, let's do some graphs first. So I'll start with a simple pivot table and move from there. Grab my data here, same way that we always do. Shift Control side arrow to the right and down to grab our whole table. And now the information I want on here, I'm going to put my customer number. And if you want your customer name, you can put that there too. We'll just put customer name because it looks nice. And then my sales amount because I'm on customer sales. So I'm going to come here and amount of sales in the local currency. And again, I like to change my number format. And I'm going to do it on my field setting. If you don't do it on your field setting, and let's say you just select your column and then do your different versions, it won't keep the formatting. You actually have to do the field setting when you right click and go to value field settings to get your formatting. So there's my sales. I can also from here build a chart. So I want to do something like a nice pie chart, we'll say. So I'll select my pie chart, pop that in, and then very easily on that pivot table again, I'm going to come here and just add some slicers. So I want to do a slicer by my customer number. And you can make it smaller or larger. If you have the plans to print this to a PDF, you can do so and make everything fit in the page. You can view with your page break or your page layout so that you know what it looks like when you print this to a PDF. So these can be reports that you're delivering out to people if you'd like to. And then the other slicer I want to add is something like, let's do just customer name. Might as well just go for that. Here, customer name, and pop that in as well. Okay. Let me change my view back to my normal so I've got some more room. And that quickly and that easily, I have now created a customer sales dashboard. Let's take the same data, but look at it in a completely different way. So I want to look at my sales by maybe a location. So again, I'm going to start off with my data. So I'm going to come here and insert my pivot table, select my data. Let's go all the way over. Now, for those of you who have joined that use something like multi-entity management and have different entities, or for those of you that have several companies, you do still have the same visibility into where things are. So you are able to filter on different companies if you want to, and utilize that data in the way that you need to. So I'm going to grab here now my location in my customer address 4, and I want to create some information off of this. So I want to add in a slicer on this one, and I want it to be off of my number 4, and I also want one on let's do on number 5, which is going to give us our countries. Okay. You can see for this example in my environment, because I don't follow standard format, it's a little bit wonky for me, but you will also be able to kind of set up your data to reflect the way that you want it to. I'm going to put a filter on my pivot table here because I want to filter out my blank and my USA. If you had several countries, of course, this would work better for you. Oh, did I took off something here. So now we've got our slicers, and I'm going to add on my graphs. So I want to, again, use that pivot table so that my slicers work in conjunction. I'll grab some charts. So if you want to see examples, you're able to see the examples when you highlight over. I've got something silly on my formatting, so it's not bringing in my visuals. But I can always select my charts and have them all inserted in. Okay. So last step for us is going to be saving our report and again importing it. And the report number is going to be on your first column there. So if we were looking at our data, bring that back over. If we were looking at our data here, this is report 119. Okay, so my last step, I'm going to go into my report layouts. And find 119. So keep in mind, you have account schedules that you can do this with. You can add some formatting on them. You can add colors, change your fonts, put things in the order that you want. Things like your account schedules are obviously going to be a little bit more involved because you've got much more fields and much more data that you're looking at. But it is now a way that we can adjust some of the formatting on those Excel account schedule exports for those of you that use account schedules rather than jet reports. So just an idea for you, customer sales to keep in mind. Okay, so my last step here after I've imported this is to just set my default and run my report. If we have any questions, please feel free to send those in. If you have reports that you're tinkering with and you have issues, just go ahead and send us a support ticket. But really anything that you guys have about these Excel reports, please let us know. It is functional in your environments as of your upgrade. So for 99.99% of our Business Central clients, your upgrade was over the weekend. So you should have this functionality available to you. So please let us know if you have any questions, if you'd like any help, if you want any reports built. We are happy to assist as needed. Okay, so we'll go ahead and leave the session open for a couple of minutes in case there's some questions. Otherwise, thank you everyone for joining us. We appreciate the time that you've taken out to be here with us, and we hope to see you on our next webinar. If you have questions, you can reach out. If you're already a Business Central client, reach out through a support ticket. Otherwise, go ahead and reach out to your account manager, Jody, Greg, Fernando, Rich, whomever you are comfortable talking with. Please feel free to reach out to them, and they are happy to pass along questions.
Have a great weekend, everybody.